Okay, so as I mentioned, it's how to keep your rabbit happy, healthy and safe. I generally talk to veterinary nurses, hence the name Exotic Veterinary Nurse Training. I teach them how to work with rabbits, guinea pigs, birds, reptiles, all the weird and wonderful animals that they don't always see in the vet clinic, but still occasionally see. I just felt that there was not enough training out there for these guys. But I've also just started this new venture working with owners, because quite often when we buy a pet rabbit, we're not actually told about how to keep that pet rabbit happy and healthy. So I want to talk to the owners to prevent them actually getting into the vet clinic in the first place. So as I mentioned, my name's Sam. I'm a Certificate 4 vet nurse. I'm accredited. I'm fear-free certified, which means that I've learned about how to reduce stress in animals in the vet clinic, and I've got a diploma in zoological and exotic species. I've been a vet nurse for about 16 years now. I've worked in general practice with cats and dogs. I worked in emergency and ICU. I've also been head nurse of an exotic clinic, and I've worked in many wildlife and zoo clinics around Australia. So I've got quite a varied experience there. All right, so now for those of you that have never used a Zoom webinar before, there's a few different ways you can get in contact. So if you've got a question throughout, please feel free to type your question into either the chat or the Q&A function down the bottom. However, at the end, we'll have a bit of time for you to type in some questions for me to answer. All right. So why rabbits? I have noticed over even the last 10 years that we are getting more and more rabbits into the vet clinic. People are moving away from having the big backyard where they can accommodate a dog to having a smaller apartment, but they still want that connection and that bond. So this is where rabbits come into it. These guys are so adorable, and they all have their own personality. So they can form really tight bonds with people, as all of you rabbit owners watching now can understand. So we'll start with the basics. So behaviour. How do we know that a rabbit is healthy and happy? So some of the signs are they're playing, they're binkying, which is basically like their little hop that they do. They're eating normally, they're grooming themselves, and they're investigating their surroundings. So these are all signs that this rabbit is very healthy. Signs that they're quite stressed, however, sometimes it's quite obvious, but sometimes they do some really subtle behaviours that we may not pick up on. But signs of being stressed are chewing on the cage bars, aggression, restlessness or nervousness. This can depend on your rabbit. Some of the smaller breeds particularly can be quite nervous and really quite jumpy. So if this is normal for them, this may not be a really stressed behaviour. Excessive grooming to the point of having bald spots, lack of interest in food, lethargy, so just not as active as normal, panting, and freezing. So we hear a lot about fight or flight in the wild. If an animal is if there's a predator species, they get really stressed and they either fight or they flight, they run. With these guys, they actually freeze. So they just sit there. We quite often see it in the vet clinic when they come out, the owner takes it out of the cage, pops it up on the table, and they just sit there completely frozen. We may interpret that as they're feeling happy and they're not trying to escape, but it's actually a really stressful behaviour. Signs of dominance. So these are demanding grooming. So going up to its subordinate, like one of the other rabbits, and demanding it being scratched, or coming up and doing that to the humans as well. Mounting, this isn't always a sexual behaviour. It can be dominance as well. This is similar with dogs as well. Biting, chasing, and circling. So these are all signs that one is being more dominant to the other. So handling, this is probably something that you all know how to do, but I just want to cover sort of all bases, especially so that we know how to teach our kids on how to properly handle these guys. So you need to be careful with their spine. We've all heard the story of rabbits being held wrong and them kicking and breaking their backs. I've never personally seen it, but I know that it can happen. So we do need to know how to handle them properly. So as with this picture, one hand scoops up under the chest, while the other hand is supporting the back end. This prevents them from kicking out and hurting themselves and from hurting you. They also do like to be held quite close to the body, and they can even tuck their little head under your arm. We should always be supervising children with rabbits. They can give nasty kicks and bites, and kids, no matter how gentle they are, they can also injure rabbits. So we really need to be having supervision anytime that the rabbit is with children. Husbandry. So it's really something I want to stress is to keep them away from predators. There is a lot of photos on the internet of rabbits and dogs or rabbits and cats living quite happily together, cuddling up. This is really heartwarming, but it does actually stress me out quite a lot because they could live happily together for 3 years, 4 years, 7 years, and then one day they just snap and the cat bites the rabbit. One bite is all it takes and it could kill the rabbit. So it really does stress me out. They can do quite a lot of damage to rabbits and dogs even more so. So I really have to stress to keep them apart. But it's also not just that they're apart, it's that the rabbit feels safe. So it's not just enough for the rabbit to be safe, they need to believe that they're safe. So this involves having a place to hide. So if they're just in a hutch with a dog circling around the outside, we still know that they're safe, but that rabbit doesn't know that and it is going to be super stressed. So what we need to do is remove that dog from circling around the cage, but we also need to pop a little hide or even a cardboard box or anything just that they can hide in. This way that they feel safe and they feel that the dog can't find them. We also need to give them access to food and water, obviously. So substrate, this just means what we put on the ground of the enclosure or the hutch or the playpen. We need to be having a soft surface, which isn't abrasive. I really don't like the hutches that have wire mesh across the bottom, so the grass can come through so they can eat it, but these rabbits are constantly walking on that wire, and that actually causes abrasions on their feet, as you can see in this picture here. Now, this is called pododermatitis or bumblefoot, which is similar to what birds can get. It's basically that the skin has been so abraded from walking on a really rough surface that bacteria has gotten into those wounds. This can actually get quite severe, this infection, and even enter their bones, at which point it may be the case for having to put them down. So we really, really need to avoid this. So grass, or if it's inside newspaper or a towel or a blanket, anything really soft is completely fine. Rabbits and guinea pigs. So a lot of people have one area and they, if you love a guinea pig, you love a rabbit, or if you love a rabbit, you're going to love a guinea pig. They seem to be very similar animals. However, they should never be housed together or near each other. So one of the first things I think about when I see rabbits and guinea pigs together is injuries. So guinea pigs are quite small. They've got really fragile, not fragile, but really thin bones in their legs and their forearms. Rabbits are ridiculously strong. If they have an issue with the guinea pig, so the guinea pig's getting to the food first or just is in the way, the rabbit may say, get away from here. And the way they do that is by kicking out with their back legs. But if those back legs connect with a guinea pig, you can either fracture a bone or you can even kill them. That one rabbit kick could be enough to kill them. So we want to obviously avoid that. The other issue is something called Pasteurella. So in the nasal cavities of rabbits, there's a pathogen called Pasteurella that just lives there normally. It's only if they're really, really sick that it can actually cause problems, but it's very rare. So this pathogen lives in the rabbit with no problem, but when they get in contact with guinea pigs, this pathogen can pass to the guinea pigs. And this is actually one of the leading causes for respiratory problems in guinea pigs, and it can actually kill them. So we really need to be avoiding that as well. In terms of diet, we need to be offering 20% good quality pellets. So this is like Oxbow or Better Farm, just really good, high quality pellets. 75% is a high fiber hay. So this is quite a significant proportion of their diet that needs to be hay. And then only 5% is vegetables and treats. So this might surprise a few people, but it is definitely this ratio that they need. In terms of hay, there are a few different types out on the market. So when they're adults, we can give them a Timothy hay or a grass or oaten hay. But when they're young rabbits or babies, we need to be offering them alfalfa or lucerne. So the young rabbits need the extra protein and calcium in the alfalfa lucerne hay. But if we were to give that to the adults, they can actually develop bladder stones. So they can certainly have it for, a treat. It's not poison to them, but if that's what they're eating for the majority of their diet, that's what's going to occur. We also need to be looking at the quality of the hay. Now, this picture didn't translate very well in terms of size with the pixels, but it was a good photo to show mouldy hay. So when you're buying hay, it needs to be kept dry, and you need to know that where you're buying it from has kept it dry. So to do this, you just check through your hay, make sure that there's no black or white spots or it's a bit dusty, because this can indicate that there's mould in there. If that's the case, you need to chuck out the whole thing and get a new fresh set. But good quality hay, you'll find at any good quality pet store. So if you've got an issue with the hay, contact your pet store and hopefully they can rectify it for you. So when I'm talking about pellets and good quality pellets, what are good quality pellets and how do you tell? So these pellets that you can see in the picture, they came from a feedlot store, but you can also get them from supermarkets. I would recommend don't touch this kind of stuff. So this stuff is non-homogeneous. So this means that there's a few different types in there. So the rabbit can go through and say, I really like peas, I'm going to eat the peas. And then I'm going to eat the little bits of corn and I'm going to eat that. And they're going to leave some parts that they don't like, which means that they're not getting all the nutrients that they require. What we need from a good quality pellet is homogeneous. So they have everything that they're provided with everything they need, but it's all sort of mushed up and put into the pellets. So they have no choice. They can't go through and pick what they want. They just have the pellets and that's all they can have. This type also has a lot of filler in it. So there's quite a lot of products in there that isn't nutritious for them. So they're not getting enough nutrients, they're not getting enough calories from it. The other issue is the apple seeds, the locust beans, and the sweet corn. These can all cause blockages in the gut. So we need to avoid that as well. So when you finish here, go and have a look at your rabbit's pellets. And if it looks like this, I would endeavour to go and have a look at some other brands that are homogenous and they don't have these potentially dangerous things in there. So this is where I'm going to get a little bit technical, but I'll talk you through any of the bigger words. So we take dietary requirements for these guys. So any pellet that you do provide for them, or any diet, you should make sure that they've got all of these components in it. So it needs 2 to 5% dietary fat. This is usually, vegetables are usually enough to provide this, so you don't actually need that in the pellets. 12 to 16% crude fiber. This is from the hay, so they don't need that again in the pellets. So this is important for the wearing down of the teeth because their teeth continually grow. They need to be chewing all the time, chewing lots and lots of hay just to wear those teeth down. It's also important for gut motility, so to keep the guts moving, because in rabbits, if the gut stops moving, they can actually pass away. So you really need to keep that moving. And to prevent trichobezoars. So this is a really fun word, but it basically just means fur balls. So fur balls can actually cause stomach blockages. That's a really common cause. The reason that they start eating fur which can cause the fur balls, is because they're over grooming. they're over grooming, sometimes because it's the weather, but usually it's because they're deficient in fibre. So if they're not getting enough fibre from their diet, they're looking for other sources. And then they find their fur and think, okay, well, I'll use the fur to keep my gut moving and use this fibre. Little do they understand that that's what causes the fur balls. Vitamin A, so deficiencies develop if we don't give any vegetables. Vitamin A is really important for the immune system. So if we don't have enough vitamin A, we start being susceptible to all sorts of bacteria and viruses. They need calcium. So diets deficient in calcium can lead to poorly mineralized bones, so they're not quite dense anymore, and flaring of the plates in between the bones. This can be exacerbated in rabbits that have no access to sunlight. So just like us, we need UV rays to function properly, same as rabbits. So an indoor rabbit needs access to the sunlight. Vitamin E is really important, and vegetables are usually the main source of this. Vitamin K, bacteria in the gut produces this vitamin in rabbits. So deficiency is not usually common, but it can occur if we give rabbits large amounts of sweet clover, because this can counteract that vitamin K. Folic acid, so deficiencies can come about if large amounts of brassicas, such as cabbages, are consumed, or beans, peas, and oranges, as they contain folic acid inhibitors, which basically just counteracts that folic acid. Choline deficiencies cause retarded growth, disrupted fat metabolism, and fatty liver disease. Iodine deficiencies rarely occur, except when there's large amounts of goitrogenic, which is iodine inhibiting foods, such as kale, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts. So these can be given, just not a huge amount. And iron is also essential for the formation of the oxygen carrying part of hemoglobin. So as you can see, this is why we really need to be providing a diet that is covering all bases. So some of the rabbit-safe vegetables that we can give them are basil, bok choy, broccoli leaves. The stems and the tops can make them a bit gassy, and because rabbits can't burp, we can have tummy aches from this. So really only treats if that's what you're going to give. The green carrot tops. Carrots should only be given as treat, as they are particularly high in sugar and calcium. So yeah, only a couple of slices as a treat. Celery, coriander, clover, dandelion leaves, and dill. Kale as a treat, mint, mustard greens, and watercress. There's certainly hundreds of other veggies out there, but this is sort of the main ones that I could think of the top of my head. So lettuce, we are able to give lettuce, but we need to make sure that it's sort of the darker green, purple varieties of lettuce. Iceberg lettuce should be avoided because it can contain high doses of lactucarium. So lactucarium, they can cause gastric upsets and diarrhea, and it can also make them high. So it's like a drug to them. They start to get a little bit high and a little bit drowsy. So it's just not quite nice for them, basically, and too much can be fatal. So we do really need to avoid the iceberg lettuce. Enrichment, these guys, 10, 15 years ago, traditionally put in a hutch in the backyard. Kids would play with them once a fortnight, once a month, and then left to it. These guys are so smart, they really deserve better than that. So we really need to be providing them with fun new ways to find their foods and keep their brain working. So a few different ways are toilet rolls stuffed with hay and a few treats inside the hay, a ball pit with treats scattered in so they can dig through the balls, commercially available toys as well, hanging food, such as in the bottom picture, little pegs. I would recommend with any of this enrichment being supervised, because I'd hate for them to hurt themselves on any of the enrichment that we do give them. And it's also a really fun way to bond with them. We should also be allowing them to do their natural behaviours, so allowing digging. So provide them with a sand pit or an area in the garden where they're allowed to dig. Allowing climbing, so you can make little boxes they can jump over and climb, or even really small kids play equipment. We can also change their enrichment. So it's really great to have a toilet roll with the hay and the treats in it. But if you give that every day, that's not enrichment anymore. It's boring. They've seen it before. So we really need to change it up for them. So these guys can have problems. They're not always healthy and happy. So what do we do when things aren't quite right? So some of the problems that they can get are mites or lice. This can be a sign of, itching and fur loss or sores from excessive scratching can be a sign of these. They're usually transmitted between rabbits or bedding. So if you have a rabbit on a bed here and then you decide that you don't want that bedding anymore and you give it to a friend, that might, if there's any mites in there, can be passed to that, your friend's rabbit. This should be, if you notice any of these signs, talk to your vet. They may want to do a quick check under the microscope. I would then recommend that you give a veterinary prescribed medication to fix this. They're quite safe and they're quite effective. I would be particularly careful with home treatments. I've been doing a bit of a search, and there are a lot of home treatments that are potentially that are designed to treat mites or worms or fleas, but there are a lot of information out there that is unsafe. Some of the products or ingredients that they make into these concoctions to help with these problems can actually cause your rabbit harm. So I'd be really, really careful taking information like that off the internet and chatting to your vet about it. So worms. Intestinal worms aren't very common in rabbits, but they can certainly occur. So what we recommend is fecal testing. So getting a really fresh sample of poo, taking it to your vet every 6 to 12 months. They'll check it under the microscope, look for any worm eggs. Majority of the time there won't be, so you don't have to do anything further. But the only odd occasion, if you do have worm eggs in that feces, then they will again give some medication to fix that. So unfortunately, there are a few viruses that can kill rabbits. So one of them being Calicium. Particularly in my area lately, there has been a bit of an outbreak and we have seen a lot of rabbits pass away from it. So some of the signs are restlessness, lethargy, poor appetite, bleeding from the nose, or just sudden death. They can be perfectly fine 1 minute and then sudden death. Calicivirus is extremely contagious. So it's spread by contact with an infected rabbit. So if there's a wild rabbit that has it and it's been in the same area as yours, they can potentially get it. Swapping bedding, substrates of the newspaper or hay, through the feces and urine, or via birds, rats, or insects. A really big one in our area is mosquitoes. So you could have a rabbit that's completely isolated from every other wild rabbit or pet rabbit, but they can still get this calicivirus because there's mosquitoes in the environment. Treatment is usually very, very unproductive. It's very, very rare that they can actually get through this, but certainly talk to your vet about that. But in terms of prevention is much, much more effective than treatment. So what we recommend is getting them vaccinated. Here in Australia, we vaccinate every 6 months for calicivirus, but it can be different in other parts of the world. The other thing you can do is obviously keep it away from other rabbits, making sure that they don't go anywhere that wild rabbits have been, and that their enclosure is mosquito-proof, so you've got mosquito-proof netting. Another really common thing that we see in pet rabbits is called gut stasis, which is basically just slowing down or stopping of the stomach. Signs of this are slowing or stopping of the appetite, a bloated abdomen, so a really hard tummy. They're stretching their tummy out, which can be a sign that they're a bit sore. They're lethargic, so just not as active. They're flinching when their abdomen's touched, which can be a sign of pain. Or they've got small, hard, infrequent fecal pellets, or none at all. They've completely stopped. Gut stasis can be caused by any number of things, such as stress, which can be caused by change of diet, change of routine, vet visit, heat stroke, pain, surgery. There's anything more stress for these guys, unfortunately. Excessive consumption of fur, as I mentioned, can cause this gut stasis, and also an inadequate diet. So the pellets that have the sweet corn and things in it can also cause this. If you notice that any of these signs, your rabbit has any of these signs, you need to get to the vet ASAP. This is a life-threatening condition and they can pass away within the hour. So if you notice any of these signs, it's best to get them checked and have nothing wrong than waiting an extra hour to see how it goes and then having a rabbit pass away. If it's just a slowing down of the gut, medications can help to alleviate this and get it through it, but then you've got to work out what the cause of it was, whether it's an inappropriate diet or stress. If, however, it's a full blockage and that gut has completely stopped, it may need surgery. If it does have that surgery, depending on your case, it's a very hard situation. So we really want to avoid that. So yeah, keep an eye out for any of these signs and chat to your vet. When to take to your vet. If anything is abnormal, anything is out of the norm, go to your vet, talk to your vet. I've joined some of these rabbit Facebook pages and there's just so many heartbreaking posts of people saying, oh, my rabbit isn't eating much, what do I do? And then people giving advice online saying, oh, it'll be right, just wait a bit, or, you know, warm it up, it'll be fine. When in that time, when all these people were giving advice, this rabbit could have passed away. So anything that's not quite right, talk to your vet straight away. And it may be nothing, but you really don't want to take that chance with these little babies. So signs of pain or illness, so as not just the gut stasis signs, but any sign of illness or pain, can be a hunched posture. So their tummy is sort of tucked in and their bottom's tucked in as well. Tachypnea, so this is just a really fun way of saying they've got a really fast breathing rate. Lethargy, uncharacteristic aggression. So they're normally a really placid, friendly bunny, and all of a sudden they've bitten you. This can be a sign that there's something wrong. Alternatively, if they're usually really aggressive and they're all of a sudden letting you cuddle them, that's a sign that there's something not quite right. They're squinting their eyes. They're not really hungry. They're grimacing, so they're pulling their eyes back and their cheeks back. And bruxism. This is a really big sign of pain. Bruxism is basically just grinding of the teeth. It's a really common thing in pain across a lot of animals, actually. So in terms of fecal pellets, what is normal? So we need to monitor these daily. So the fecal pellets on the left, these are perfect. This is what we want to see during the day. They're not sticky, they're not smelly, they're kind of crumbly, but they're not wet and sticky. The ones in the middle, these are perfectly normal as well. So these are called cecotrophs. These we generally won't see, but they're still being produced. So these are the nighttime feces. Rabbits generally eat them straight out of their anus because it's recycling of the nutrients, so you won't generally see them. You will occasionally see them if they're sort of overindulged and they don't feel like they need those extra nutrients, but generally you probably won't ever notice them. The feces on, excuse me, on the right, however, this is something I would definitely talk to your vet about before you do anything else. These pellets are really hard. They've got no smell, but they're really hard and really dry. This can be a sign that the gut is slowing or almost stopping. If in doubt, call your vet. If there's anything I can impress on you during this talk is call your vet. The vets are more than happy to answer questions. We would much rather answer a question before a problem happens than fix or put your rabbit down in the end. We all want your rabbits to live a happy, long life, so we're more than happy to answer any questions. All right, so if you're wanting a little bit more information, I know that the internet has a plethora of places you can go to. I find that these places have some pretty good information. However, if you have any questions, feel free to type them away now. Or if you go away and have a think tonight, tomorrow, next week, next year, and you just think, well, I'm not quite sure about this diet or this husbandry or whether this enrichment is safe, just send me an email. I really love helping people in that way. Otherwise, check out my Facebook and my Instagram. I've always got some fun stuff happening on there. Or if you are wanting to know a little bit more about the enrichment side of things, head to my website. We generally have webinars directed at vet nurses, but we have a really good webinar on there about enrichment. So it's called Improving Animal Welfare Through Behavioural Enrichment. It is about, it's from a zoo nurse, so she's talking from the zoo perspective. There's been a lot of research put into enrichment for zoo animals, but it also extends into our pets. So it talks about the whys of what we're doing, how to keep it safe, and when to do it. So if you're interested in that side of things, definitely have a look at that one. It's probably one of my favourite webinars we have on there. All right, so it doesn't look like we've got any questions coming through, which I hope is good. It means that I've hopefully answered all your questions. All right, well, I'll leave it there. I'll be sending through the copy of the recording within the next hour or so. So check your email inboxes for that. And I look forward to talking to you all in the future. Thank you. Bye.